Dumelang, Sanbonani, Habari ya Jioni, fellow Africans, good evening. We are coming to you live today from various parts of our continent to celebrate Africa Day, which was on the 25th of May on Monday. But what kind of Africa do we live in today? Is this the Africa that we envisage for ourselves? Who are we as Africans? Where did we come from? How did we get to be here today? We're going to learn how to embrace African heritage and learn about ourselves, who we are as African people, to use that to thrive on the global stage.
The Mandela Institute for Development Studies made a bold decision to focus on reclaiming and valuing our own way of being as Africans. Going back to say, who are we as Africans? What are the systems which we can identify as defining exactly who African way of being and doing things are?
Agenda 2063 is the continent's master plan for transforming Africa into the global powerhouse of the future. The aspirations reflect our desire for shared prosperity and well-being, for unity and integration, for a continent of free citizens where the full potential of women and youth, boys and girls, is realized.
There are those who would suggest to you that an African is somebody from the African continent, full stop. Somebody born on the African continent, full stop. And sometimes they would add also that it's a black person. And a black person. The definition of African is almost equals to blackness. Now, this type of definition of an African is blackness is a biological feature. It is an immutable biological feature which you have. You were born with it and it's given. Geography is also something which largely precedes you. You are born in a certain country in the world, and it happens to be on a continent, and it's the African continent. Now, if we say that it is either one of these two, that it is just blackness and being born on the African continent, that stands in sharp contrast to the other set of approaches which point in the direction of culture. That is both material and immaterial culture. That is the language we use, the religious practices we have, the rituals we have, the customs we have, the beliefs, the ideas, the sentiments we hold, the values, the cultural values we have, which are also historically traceable.
We've allowed health systems across the continent to be neglected, and we're the least prepared continent, arguably, to be able to cope with the COVID-19 system. And I think the fact, as many have pointed out, that many of our leaders seek treatment abroad rather than actually improving hospitals at home is an indictment. And the growing indebtedness of Africa also. Many African countries are among the most indebted on the continent. And the fact that many of the conflicts in Africa 10 of the UN missions are deployed in Africa, and 85% of the UN's peacekeepers are deployed in Africa. That will also exacerbate some of these issues relating to how we deal with the COVID crisis.
The genesis of it all is finding the love for your heritage. If you do not love something, you will not fight for it. And if you love for it, you will fight for it tooth and nail. It will not matter how much it costs for you to do it and how much energy it would take for you to fight for something. But I think it really boils down to loving something so much that you will fight for it so much.
It was a very good start to systematically bring together people who are interested in really knowing much more in depth what we mean by Africanness, one, but those also who can contribute to help us to unpack, as it happened this afternoon, to unpack what we mean and how we can get there.
There's a massive agenda that we still need to achieve in order to undo the wrongs of the Berlin Conference and create the Africa that we want. So this is most certainly not the end. We will have another webinar in the spirit of researching and documenting African heritage. We're going to be looking at African science. How is it that we know things, we're able to forecast things? We have indigenous knowledge systems that are not documented. So we're going to dive into that. And we're also going to highlight the contributions to science and technology by African people, because even that is not documented.